Alright, Lamrim Ting and Tsongkhapa Tamje and Damga to Chevi to Sedima Kasa, the Shiri, the Nenza, Zugi, Sangi Sumbu, Songrap Ganeshi in a Sangi Yokopan, Tobi Chedo, Songshapa Janjares, Jizadanguedan, give you Gone, Sangi Yokopan, Tobi Sumbu, Janjanza, Sangi Tubus with Damgares, Jizadi. So, Tizanga Chasadi Nyamsu Lengoares is an Undusine Chitama Chasu Sadi, Denigi Hakoa della, another Tamato Chawa Sachi, Hakoa says Muro, Denizan Kasanga to the Denishua.
Good morning. Last night we continued to look at the section of the text called The Greatness of the Dharma, and we are looking at the second of the four greatnesses, the greatness of seeing all of the Buddha's teachings as spiritual instructions. And the meaning of this greatness is to come to recognize that all of the Buddha's teachings, all of them, are our spiritual instructions that we are to put into practice. So this is what we are continuing to look at. Immediately turning to the text, near the top of page 16, the first quotation. And I'll just change the translation slightly. It's not a mistake in the translation, but just this word nature is perhaps used a bit broadly. The Buddha's holy Dharma is itself twofold, scripture and realization. So I'll read it again. Again, the meaning here is the same. The Buddha's holy Dharma is itself twofold, scripture and realization. In accordance with the statement, there's nothing apart from the scriptural teaching and the realized teaching.
Temba said, Sangi Temba, number Sangi be Temba said, Jorua. De Temba said, the Temba Telia, Niore, Tembe Tamchus, Sangi Jumne, the Temba Sangi Jumne, you soon be Tambichu, said Telia, and Yawalo Chena Niore, Tembe Tamchu, Namni Deser. Then you are each the needy countries. Lungi tempa tope tempa de luna tope tani dos lungi tempa se tope tempa se niores cesada sanyi ye son bi tambe che de la da tambe che la na sanyi tempa la na jibarwa cesada sanyi tempa se de ane delia yawa che ni na yongore ni gares lungi tempa se tope tempa se de niores luna tope tani dos ngore.
As the text says, then, there is a quotation here from Vasubandhu's Treasury of Abhidhamma, where he says, our founder teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, his teachings themselves have a twofold division, that being the scriptural teachings and the realized teaching.
Lungi tempa sanyi sungbi che sungdi ke chasa lungi tempa se or lungi tempa se roda. The topic tempa la yundu lung de sung shepi dunda de la tue baje dene duen sam dene sambala dene jukula topa kula ki da lam solam jolam komna se ta de chasa andu sin topic tempa se de komba le tue sam je ba lung de la tue sam je bi dunda de la kom je topa kula ki dene ki da yunde de la ya ane topic tempa se ro chasa di ni se de.
Again, just before I come to what Genna just said now, bear in mind what we looked at last night about this threefold approach of hearing, reflecting, and meditating. So bear that in mind as the explanation comes. So now to what Genna said. So the meaning here is that, looking at the first of the twofold division, that of scriptural teachings, this refers to the teachings from Buddha Shakyamuni himself. So these are what one comes to hear and reflect on. And then what follows from this is, having heard and reflected, one is able to engage in meditation. And this leads to the realized teaching, the second of the twofold division.
제자다 상지기 뜸바 상지 줌내디게 남바 상지 비취 세데라야 룽규시다 또베 취디니마도 메가 장장 취냠는지 냠는지규 세데 다 디니리아 롭종셰바데라 냠는지시고 와다서 룽규 취냠는지규 세데 룽규 취 상지 송셰비 룽디게 소수기파 롤파 롤레 신야 롤레신 디파 안지게 신야다 롤레 진바제다 마셰바제 안 롤레 냐야 and digi and donatelia and samtang and the samtane de donateli samtane de yane yado comba jedi dangan zu chenyam ne cheba sedi that it denisi sungorwa de cause dordiro shubaina.
Then we, in the explanation from Lama Tsongkhapa underneath the quotation, we see that other than these two, the scriptural teaching and the realized teaching, there is nothing else to be sought. The scriptural teaching, the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni, these are what we need to apprehend, understand, and gain stability of through hearing and reflecting. And in dependence on successful completion of hearing and reflecting, we then meditate on them. And in this way, we give rise to the realized teaching.
제림시 송고로와 제송 송바다 롱도게 템바 니레 메라 시데다 상예기 템바 세데라 야 룽기 템바스나 또베 템바 디니마도 요 말레스 제사 상예기 최세 담베 최세 가리시나 디니나네 뒤두고레스 그러다 야네 룽기 최딩 거라 야네 또베 최딩 거 또베 템바딩 거레스 제사 템바 세데 디니마도 요 말레스 니레 메라세.
And as we see again below the quotation, in accordance with the statement, there is nothing apart from the scriptural teaching and the realized teaching. So this makes it very clear. This is a complete enumeration of the Buddha Dharma. There is nothing further to be sought.
ma sanje sungdi di gari tingore la na da lungi temba ni sa da lungi temba se ganesh la gore se na che la do lembe chu ane duba chiluk ten la be ba yin la je sa da lungi temba se sanje sungdi gi dondala ane gari sungore se che nyamsu len se la do lembe su nyamsu len ha da di ane duba nyamnen jeta de sungores denige sumbige sanje sungdela da lungi chese gore se de wada.
Starting to look at the next paragraph. The scriptural teaching is, so we can imagine a colon there. Here comes an explanation from Lama Tsongkhapa based on the above quotation of what is meant by the scriptural teaching. The scriptural teaching is how the Dharma should be practiced, that's the first point, and establishes the manner of accomplishment, the second point.
Yasanda lungu temba ne ladu lembe su che, ladu lembe su se nyamnen jeta lembe su se gurba. Chesanga zo ladu lembe su se jinga zo jalal ma son laba ge su dus lena de ya, ane chi kanis len gora sen ya ji labe lena churba de bene 지게 jalal ma son cha cho cho ro ne sab sab ji ge li ji len goya da je chao de ji wo ne shu chen bu tian goya da de ne len na na so chung gu wa. Chesa la de lembe su se 다데 딩한조 잘랄 마소나 라베 수 렌하데라 다 지게 케셔 자마라 용구로와 다 라도 렌 데네 수 렌제데네 베셔다로 차그로와 어디 나신 당아조 최라도 렌베 수시리 산이이 아주 냠는 지게 림바데 당보 퇴바다 삼바치 수지시고 퇴삼지 수시 제가 최라도 렌베 수시리 최대 당보가 저기다 퇴바 라마지스데 시인선 수 퇴고레스 퇴 제 퇴는 퇴비 된다라 양 도시 삼고를 해야지. 지상 퇴비 추당 안 삼비 추디게 안 송고를 해야지. 롱글 반나라 그 템바디가 송여기 줘야 되나? 최라도 렘비 수에서 퇴삼 지수도 송고를 해야지. 띵고를 해야지 오래다.
So exploring the meaning of the scriptural teachings, let's look at the first of these two parts. The scriptural teaching is how the Dharma should be practiced. So this word practiced, there's several. This particular word here is literally the manner in which to take the Dharma into your hands. So this is the literal word that has been translated here as practice. How to take the Dharma into your hands. And how do we do so? We have to hear many teachings, and whilst doing so, we need to reflect, contemplate on their meaning. This is how to take the Dharma into our own hands, from the words of the teacher or the text. To take it into our hands, we need to hear or study and reflect, contemplate on those teachings.
당볼 마소는 또 레라라 되게 년고 걸어 최 퇴고 주고 안에 디네 곧 델마 안에 사바 되게 냐요 당보 그런데 아주 최기 당보 그런데 동반이 있어야 되는데 직 주년 바인데 지셔라 고토야요 말아 지사 최년비 수유시의 지사 레 당보디 최 퇴바제 발에 퇴바제 당보 된듯이 퇴바제 되는 이바 된듯이 도스 냠는 제고래 사지 변한 저기 람림 나라 다디디 람림 나 숨고로 당보가 도시네 제부 충유 람이린 바디 바시 되는 말징게 람이리 바지 되는 제부 침발 람이린 바디 바도시의 고년하지 고 소수기 로라야 안당고 레라라디기 마시 네 안된마 안지게 사바사바사다 냐데 지자 냐타도 년비 추샤다 되네야 지게 년추 되네게 다 년비 된데라야 야 삼나타나 삼 도스지나 삼당고레스 당보 되네사 베네 지게 데들름름나 송고르와 제 당보가 가르삼데 기지기지 미다베 고 삼당고레사다 되네 안에 콜유 동하다 데레 engejung 삼당고레 되네 셈자 탐지지 지게 동하 삼다 되나 자와도 안 동하디 중해 규가를 되네 중고레 디 규가라가서 두스제바제야다 되네 규델레 년보 가르 매바서 년보 가라가레 두스 제바 림바 두스네 직 장사 림바디 두스 장고레사지 되나 삼로 되네 땅고레사지 제사도 퇴바 지수다 삼로 땅서 이디 송고르와데 제사디 룽규 쳔날레 디 송고레세레 제사 최 년추다 디 된다라 삼로 땅서 땅다디게 송고레 제디제 쉐라도 림비 수유세 디스고다네 지금 미타바 삼데네 코베 둥아 녜중 고미야데 삼다다 데네 잠니제 두스야야야 삽살 치고로와
Continuing to look at this first of the two aspects of scriptural teachings, which is how the Dharma should be practiced or taken into one's hand. So this is where we start. And at first, when we're very new to the Dharma, we will struggle to understand the slightly subtler points. So we'll need to start with a more general presentation. And slowly over time, as we hear more and reflect on what we are hearing, we will be able to take meaning from subtler teachings. For example, many of you will have had the experience, or when you first hear about a topic such as emptiness, it's very confusing. And perhaps your experience would have been having to hear many teachings on emptiness before it became somewhat less confusing. And in fact, in accordance with this reality that one needs to start where one is and develop oneself accordingly, the layout of the form of teachings of the Lamrim is that there is a particular progression in the sequence of trainings that one needs to engage in, starting with the trainings in accordance with the practitioners of initial capacity, later developing those trainings which are shared with practitioners of intermediate capacity, before finally being a suitable vessel, suitably developed to engage in the trainings which are unique to practitioners of supreme capacity. Here, the process of coming to know how the Dharma should be practiced. This is where we hear and, together with hearing, reflect or contemplate on the meaning. Hearing about first impermanence, reflecting on impermanence in a broad broad sense, both in terms of this life, but in terms of all compounded phenomena. And reflecting on then the impermanence of this life and all impermanent phenomena, we come to reflect then, or hear teachings on and reflect on the sufferings of samsara. And as we hear teachings and reflect on this, we become suitable to hear teachings on the causes of the sufferings of samsara and so forth. So there's a particular sequence in which we engage in hearing and reflecting. So this is how we come to know how the Dharma should be practiced.
다들 간주 지소 럽존에 다가로 와던 간주 지팀 비 지소나 럽존진에 부고 당보 랍라치 당보 레 당보 랍라치 핸들리 부들레 당보 간주 지 안질 마손 라바이네 고 당보 지네 자타마 바도 당보 딜라고로와 딜랍 차외 제라 안디 진데 안 제리아 아니 지콜레라 보지 니 직돔제니나 가지 차기래 시차기래서다 되네 지게 돔질라야다 되네 바지 나는 마 니테네까지 차기래서는 숨 차기래서 두스 레라라디게 랍 되는 마전 되는 바 삽삽삽 랍 주고로 와 당한서 랍달에 다가로 와디 주고로 봐 디나지미 대한 전에 중요 템바다 되네기 지기 탱교에지나네 고 시에세 네세로 골로 야고요는 안질람 나가 고 사바디게 라 여러바다 디나신다 먼저 지소나래 롭존 제타 되네로 와자 지사다 산지기 숭비기 안줄이야 난게 삼류기 냠는 제타고 림바들래야 랍타로 지바로 책을 되네스 고고를 숨으로와다.
And this approach is important and should be followed. And we can see, perhaps we can recognize the importance of it through looking at the approach we take in society. If you think of when you started your schooling, or perhaps your children, if as young kids, you're immediately presented with algebra, it would be incredibly confusing when you're struggling to even recognize X and Y, let alone understand what it means. Rather, there's a progression. One comes to understand the concept of numbers, then learning what 2 plus 2 means, learning one's timetables, and only much later being ready for more advanced concepts. But there is a particular sequence in training. And if the foundation has been well developed, the later years will come about quite easily. If the foundation hasn't been well developed, one will really struggle in later years. So this is the same approach taken in the Dharma.
On ladili tsui se di twesam je na di je dende druba cheluk se da druba cheluk se da gom japta sung ro druba cheluk se da gom japta ji sa da ngan gom jada su de ji ge da ben ding yi sin ru xin da zhe ji de bi ding dang bo xin ne zhu bu re xin ne zhu ba la an sem ne be tap gu le de ne xin ne zhu dang an ji ge nyabang a bo ne du ji nyembo ji du ji ye de ne zhu dang du xin an nyembo du xin ne de nyembo de de wo re de ne de yo re de pa rin ba ro che xin ne zhu ya zhu gom jia xin ne ding yi sin zhu de ne ding yi sin de zhe ji zhu che che la ben ne yu de la mi bi ge da dong ba ni mi le bi xin ne zhu ba ne dong ba ni le bi xin me xin ne zhu de ne xin ne zhu ne xin ne zhu ta de ne de zhu bo re sa na gom jia da ro de xin ne zhe ji de gom go ro xin ne zhu de ne dong ba ni le mi bi xin ne zhu san de dong ba ni le la dong zhu ye de ne de zhu bo re sa de gom jia da rin ba ji sa du xin ne zhu ba che lu se de san yi ge sung na la ya gom jia ta ge da dang bo tue ba che特别短的什么当的了去拉到两把，什么特别短的还会的的了这些的米不公家的，那都是的公家他人把的，年不的公那个人把的嘛，都送过来，就是上一个轮个，上一送拿来把其他短的就是订过来做的。年不你这些，年不个是年不啊。So looking at
the first part of the sentence, the scriptural teaching is how the Dharma should be practiced. So that first part we've now looked at, how the Dharma should be practiced. So let's come to the second part, and establishes the manner of accomplishment. So this is the second part of what is contained within the scriptural teaching. The manner of accomplishment means the manner in which to meditate, or how to meditate on particular topics. So again, because this word accomplishment is used in many situations, but it's here in this context means how to meditate on the topic that one has been hearing and reflecting on. So let's take, for example, one is wanting to develop calm abiding, and in order to be able to meditate on emptiness. So here one needs to know that to meditate on a topic such as emptiness, with calm abiding, one actually needs a special insight or meditative insight. But prior to attaining meditative insight, it's indispensable to develop calm abiding. But to develop calm abiding, one needs to know how to do so. So there one needs to understand the presentation on, for example, because there are two different presentations, that of the five faults and the 8 antidotes. And one needs to understand them, not merely intellectually having heard the words, because one needs to both hear and reflect, or study and reflect. And in this way, gain certainty of how to develop the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. Moreover, if the topic that you are wanting to meditate on with the union of calm abiding and meditation, union of calm abiding and meditative insight is that of emptiness, then one also needs to know the entire process of how to come to understand emptiness well enough to meditate on it with calm abiding and meditative insight. So therefore, one needs to understand all the steps well enough of the meditation on emptiness, of the topic of emptiness rather, through extensive hearing and reflecting on emptiness. Then one is ready to engage in the next step. But here, this is all about the manner of accomplishment, understanding clearly the varying steps of the meditation that will follow.
Atisha, dine topi tempa sedi kana shirye lamnada, topi tempa ni tenla pepa na, anjidar tenla papa tar drupa yinpi, dini gyunje su drupa yinde eso.
That's then having looked at the two aspects of the scriptural teaching. So then let's come to the realized teaching. While the realized teaching is what is thus established, since you practice in accordance with what is to be established, these two act as cause and effect.
Na dobe tempa ni ane tenla pepa yinbe, tempa ni tenla pepa na, so tenla pepa la du ko jeba cheche, dambu tueshe, tubi duanda la jeba cheche pa, jeba cheba de tenla pepa so or tenla pepa di yinbe gyumzen samda jeba chene di tenla pepa. Je jide tenla pepa tarra se jeniki tenla pepa se de jeba ji di re mer jeba chin di yinba di da samba cheba di re tenla pepa sambi ki duen di do yin tenla pepa so or tenla pepa so. Pepa se de ngazo to ba ru ko war da tenla pepa se sang yi yu sung gi tue ne tebe duen de la ya samno tang se de tenla pepa se de samno tang. Deni tang bi ge jide tenla pepa se de deni duen da de di re sha se na ha go yu du ha go ana tenla pepa tar druba yin be se deni ha go yu duen di gomje gomdrup che go de druba res. Jizan di drupa res, jizan dini gomdrup che ne tokpa gyula ki yang du, da di dela ka so re tokpa tenpa la ki res or tokpa tenpa si di res or.
The text, anyway, let's just read as Gina read it. While the realized teaching is what is thus established, since you practice in accordance with what is to be established. So what this means, what realized teachings mean, is that when first, as we heard with scriptural teaching, hears and reflects extensively on the meaning of a particular topic to the point where one gains certainty, where one establishes the meaning of the topic with certainty. Then, having heard and reflected extensively, one is able to engage in the third, meditation. Meditation then, which as was mentioned last night, is in this context a union of calm abiding and meditative insight. How we in English generally use the word meditation in this context is included in reflection. But here, having heard and reflected extensively on the topic, one is then, when one has gained certainty of the topic, then one is ready to engage in meditation. And the process of meditation is what leads to realization.
Deni Yunje Sujoa in the Esor. Deni said the Carson Lungi Tempa, the Tope Tempa in Yunje Esor. Just a tambo Lungi Tempa di Gushe and de. Do you Lungi Tempa the Gum becomes the Lungi Tempa de Te. Deni Tobe Duendela, some Gena Topa di Gule Kiwar. And that the Kiwadi, Yugarage and Lungi Tempa Telatine, and Tope Tempa the Yungore. Just a Lungi Tempa, the Tope Tempa di Lungi Tempa the Gushe. Tope tempa de Tevuri or Chisada, Tope Dini Kundiri Session.
Going through first this process, extensive process of hearing and reflecting, one comes to gain certainty of the topic. Then one is ready to engage in actual meditation on it, and this is what leads to realization. So from this we see, and now turning to the text, these two act as cause and effect. The result is that the teachings are realized, and they are realized in dependence on their cause, the scriptural teachings. So the scriptural teachings act as the cause for the realization of those teachings. Hence, there's a relationship of cause and effect between the scriptural teaching and the realized teaching.
Da topi tempa ni chiduiran, sangi tempa ni yore, chesada lungi tempa sedi, Geshe Deneshi Karitingo Tingore said Mahasung. Chisnata topi tempa sedi, Geshe di two Nyamlin Chen Topakia de Lada, topi tempa lagores, Tini is that the lungi tempa the Geshe di Geshe Balatine, topi tempa ligores, Chisna lungi tempa, the topi tempa the Gundere Essage, Lucinata Dorduna Deneshi.
In brief, what we've looked at here is come to see or understand the meaning of scriptural and realized teachings and its relationship with hearing, reflecting, and meditating. The scriptural teachings are where we come to understand the topic extremely well, where we come to certainty on the topic. We come to ascertain the meaning of the topic through extensive hearing and reflection on that topic. And then, based on that, we engage in actual meditation on the topic, which leads to, so the result of that is the teachings are realized. And that then is the meaning of scriptural teaching and realized teaching.
Zada sanyi tempa tela tempe sanyi tsungpe tamche tampe che de la lungi tempa da tobe tempa ni yongore se ni yor du gore se lungna tempe tanyi doze ta sanyi tempa jin se de kan de le de jin jeba ma jeba duber jeba khona wo so le de jin jeba ma jeba duber jeba khona wo sikti sungore sikti dangbo de jin jeba ma jeba duber jeba khona wo so le de jin si de garasna sangi sungdire lungi tempa de jin si de lungi tempa so so lo le sin che ma shene ma shandal pa shene ane chiko lobchon cheba ina de jin cheba ma cheba di sangi lungi tempa jingo re ese lungi tempa jinna di ko re ti lungi tempa jinna ge che garela na sangi sungbe sungdi pa lo le sin so so lo le sin tembe ma cheba sin ne di ma shan pa du sin re ta ma sungje she de la ta sangi tempa jingo re lungi tempa jingo re je de jin cheba ma cheba Drupa Sheba, Tope Temple Jinju Garelana, Lungi Temple Dundadi, and to Tebaje, Dunada Samne, Rangi, Yamne Gom Jepche, Sosicula Topa, Gulekeva and Benet, Jam, because of Jam Nijet and Solam, the Jolam Lasova, the Niku Topa Gulekeva, Lungi Tope Temple Zimbari, Ezore. Chesa Sangi Temple de Lungi Temple, the Tope Temple Niores. Da Sangi Temple Zina de la Carrios, Zina de la Niores, Lungi Temple Zinsia, the Tope Temple Zinse, Zina Niungores, Lungi Temple Zin, Tope Temple Zin, Zina Niungores. She's a Lungi Temple Zina de Carrelana, Lungi Temple de Lungi, Sosu Lola Sin, Sosu Lolas Majeba Lola Sin, Curio Bache, Sin, and Shell Padusin, Shevana, Palapche Dusuret, Bashevana, then Lavaina, the Lungi Temple Zimbari Egere. Na Tope Temple Zina Carelana, Sosugi Lung Tuesam Turbaje, Sambaje, Disambu Duendel, Gomje, Sosugula, Topocula Kiwana, the Tope Temple Zimbares, Chisada, Cholambada, Jolambada, Tinijam Niji Gule Kitting, Chasa Tope Temple Zingo Regida, Chisa Tope Temple Zina Diresia, Chisa Temple de la Lungi Temple, Tope Temple Niore, Lungi Temple Zinagare, Tope Temple Zinagares, Dizincheva Majebo, Drubacheva Conares, Disungore.
Hopefully that's far from the explanation. This quote from the Abhidhamma is quite clear. The Buddha's holy Dhamma is itself scripture and realization. And Geshe then gave a further quotation from Abhidhamma, which presents that there are two ways to apprehend or take hold of the Buddha's teachings. So this additional quotation is a different way of expressing what we have here. So the first way of taking hold of the Buddhist teachings, taking hold of them in one's mind, is, as we've understood with the scriptural teachings, first to understand how the Dharma should be practiced. There one comes to hear and reflect extensively, coming to gain a deep understanding without fault of the Buddha's teachings, without any gap in one's knowledge or any forgetting of what one has heard. So one has heard and reflected extensively on the teachings, and they are present in one's mind, they abide in one's mind. One has taken hold of them to the extent that the meaning and all the varying stages have been taken hold of without any error or gap in our understanding. Thereafter, one comes to understand the manner of accomplishment, how to engage in the process of meditation. So that then is the second aspect of scripture, of the scriptural teachings, how to now engage in meditation. And then one does engage in meditation. And this is then one is engaging in meditation in the way that one has trained. And here one is meditating on the union of calm abiding and meditative insight on any of the topics of the Dharma. Previously, I mentioned in relation to emptiness, but this will be in relation to all the topics of the Dharma. It could be on impermanence, it could be on love, it could be on definite emergence, it could be on bodhicitta. Because it's when one gives rise to a realization of a particular topic, then one has given rise to the realized teaching in one's continuum. And this then is the second way to take hold of the Dharma. The first was through extensive hearing and reflecting, where one has an excellent understanding without forgetting anything, without error. And then the second comes from then engaging in actual meditation on that and gaining realization. And all the realizations of the paths, whether the paths of accumulation or preparation and so forth, all of those realizations are included here in the realized teaching, or to express it differently, of taking hold of the teachings of the Buddha through realization.
gyude gyume soda da nganzuge dusine rikilubi dinaloya da nganzuge zibene denegi beshi simya mangu ore bene ngondo kin jisun jambo be seshi ngondo kin dike chasan lol sim gyukje lol sim gyogo ore de uma chupa sa da kasabri pen dawara pe sonji uma chupa sayada zawa shirap sayada denegi da deni ane di membe ke da pe mangbo sin je lo sin pa kyo jigi gongda takpa la kyo ya da an jigi ka ma kyo na ya sin ma kyo ne je ru ro deni chen ba je ma jo kyo ya da ndi na sin le be senge sa be je be jawa duen sa sayada deni ke pe mangbo jik da so so mi wongbo raping so so ge ri bo ya da lo chi ma ga sim ya da deni ke sim je jigi 육제에 대한 데네게 직 제마주 교회에 대한 망고용을 대 교회에 대한 심보에는 유대 제 유대단 규매로 신의 배지 초소야 지선 배치상 배질 마슈게 대뭐 할로를 되고 차상 봐 신로를 봐 되는지 또 너가 제 심이야 망고 심제 도신 교장제네 도신 망고 지고 다디 가르선에 룽기 템바 징고 지고 마제바 징고고와 지네 자디 봐 룽기 템바 진다데 소소 로를 신 파교 제마주바냐 안제 제 밀리아디 발라야디 룽기 템바 진다에 송로와 디네 잔 먼저 다사디와 있는 디네기 규르 규메들어서 봐 근데 로를 신고 빼지 망고 심고고래 되네 로르지야 다들 짐발로를 짐바시오를 퇴섬데 카하와 다들 베베지 발로를 신제 대진제발라로 소소기 짐바소를 마제발라는 셴을 바딘데 바제 셴의 중에서 라고로와디 라비아디소 디룽이 템바진다디 소로
That's taking hold of the scriptural teachings, or apprehending the teachings, taking hold of the scriptural teachings. There are so many monks in the great monasteries of Ganden Drepung Seda, as well as those of Tashi Lumpo, Gyume, and Gyutu, who have taken hold of extensive teachings, both those who are engaged in their studies and those who have graduated. Texts such as The Ornament of Clear Realization by Maitreya, Fundamental Wisdom by Nagarjuna, as well as the commentaries by Chandrakirti and others. These and many other texts, as well as the Abhidhamma by Vasubandhu. These and other texts, the monks, both those studying and those who have graduated in Ganden Drepung Seda, Tashi Lumpo, Gyume, and Gyuto, have come to take hold of through repeated study and memorization. And when one memorizes a text like this, not only does it take some time and constant repetition, but to maintain what one has previously memorized, they need to be regularly recited. Otherwise, holes do come into one's recollection. So therefore, monks who have studied a previous topic will still from time to time, or fairly regularly, recite what has previously been memorized to keep it fresh in their mind. And with this foundation, they have a foundation to teach to others as well. And those monks at the tantric colleges of Gyume and Gyuto, in addition to their sutra studies, also memorize a vast number of sadhanas or in English meditation manuals, which they also commit perfectly to memory. So this is a very clear way where one can see that the scriptural teachings have been taken hold of, are being held in the mind of these scholars.
그래서 상이 유구의 제반의 순기 제반, 투기 제반 세디 디나데다 구송 투숨기 제반의 순기 제반이 초도 규발해 순고를 제반 숨기나네 구의 제반의 순기 제반, 안에 투기 제반의 투 순기 제반의 초도 규발해서 제반이 초도 규발해 순기 제반에는 순디래다 순기 제반. 그래서 구송 투숨기 제반 시도자 내가 지자와죠 어디 송디 초도 규발에 제바선 제제제와.
And if you think of emulating the
제바선도 레가르 시에서 뭐죠 레가르와.
Leka.
예시에서는 제바를 송게 제바 투기 구이 제바세.
And if you think of engaging in the activities of the enlightened Buddhas, the activities of their body, speech, and mind, this is the memorization and maintaining the memorization of these texts is an illustration of the activities of speech of the Buddhas. So engaging in the enlightened activities of the speech of the Buddhas is this holding in mind the teachings of the Buddha, such as those that are mentioned.
다르스는 숭기 제바세디 숭세디 산지기 파 숭지바 민망볼 파 숭진디바 퇴제 디던다를 삼다라고 그러고 삼다에도 된데다 하고에 또 보길래게 숭дел라되는 용어마도 산지 숭르면은 지금 구이 제바디기 아니 산지 슈비가 바도 구이 제 구여와 산지 구냥을 대선에 구이 제요 말와 제자디 윤중부를 간절로 판도하지 리투음도와 다 산지 툭세에 대한 저기 제투 말에 마주게 산이 툭간에 또 두야 칼레가 보라 지산 투기 진일라바 되스 용 진일레베게 제바지네 용구를 마도 정한적이 되네게 땅 아주 산이 숭딩 아주 고투고래 지산 미수이네 숭데 치디 고투고자 니기 치기 된다데 마 구이기 되는 다 숭 투기고네 된다 차산 땡투여요 말와 공부하시 삼당 두신 지 판도를 준다 선배 삼로지 되네 삼다는 숭디 툭디 전나 동고면 메디는 제라 판도 제도 깔래하고 그러고 숭디바 숭야도 근데 탑람 람 냠는 지게 림바 되는데 제거를 디봉 기룹 되는 제거를 냠보 되는 때고 차상바 냠는 림바 바 된샤 숭샤바자 니게 된다도 삼다 냠는 제도 마주길로 또 보기 기로 그래서 숭기 제바디 중앙절이야 아주 두자라 판도 치쇼들이에서 숭기 제바디 판도 치쇼래서 이미 김전 지게 하나 가서 산예 점된데 다공 지금 양한을 되네 로 이동을 하서 조사하래 돼 이내 산예 숭기 디 아주 다들 퇴하다 지금 숭들이야 숭샤바들이야 로정제야 여반장 아주 길에 냠는 제야다 고급다리바도 유대바디 단 산예 숭기를 되네 용고로와 되네 인자다 아주 또보길에 개와 차산 산예의 숭들을 되네 용고원자 대시 도배 템바세다 룽이 템바 준리레세도 도배 템바도 룽이 템바를 때는 용구래 신자 당아서 냠는 유규라 도바 규래 끼와 타바다 탐제기며 고번 토배하기 냠 토배에도 냠는 림바지야들이 되네게 토배야돼야 나사기 숭델을 때는 용고자 숭이 템바데 마존리아 두자 마존리 판도 치쇼레스 인자다 숭이 제바도 초도 유발에서 디소 만돌라 판도 치쇼레스
In our world, there are the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha is abundantly present, and this is something to really recognize and understand thereby our great fortune that we have, and that therefore we can have a precious human rebirth. And of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, of those three, the body of the Buddha, such as in statues, for that to have a transformative impact on one is quite difficult. The mind of the Buddhas is present everywhere, but for that to have a transformative impact on one is quite difficult. The speech of the Buddha, that was given in order, or the Buddha uttered speech in order to benefit beings, both those who had the great fortune to be in his direct presence, as well as those over the following 2,600 years who had developed the causes to come into contact with it, not directly from the Buddha, but through those who were keeping the speech of the Buddha alive in this world by taking hold of it in their minds. So with this understanding, the monks at these great monasteries, also in the great nunneries too, they commit to memorizing and understanding what is being memorized in order to teach, because it's keeping the speech of the Buddha alive in this world and being able for it to fulfill its function. Merely committing it to memory is insufficient. Merely understanding it is insufficient, but one does so, when it puts it to memory, understands it, comes to understand it, in order to share the benefit with others. This is how it's kept in the world, enabling ever more beings to come into contact with it and cultivate it in their own minds. So this is something that people can do, and people are doing, to act in accordance with the enlightened activities of the Buddha's speech. To act in accordance with the enlightening activities of the Buddha's mind, that is a little difficult for us to do, but one slowly tries. But in terms of the Buddha's speech, this one can and many are doing. And this is the most important of all the Buddha's enlightened activities, that of speech, because it is his teachings that bring benefit to beings. It's keeping those teachings alive in the world and enabling thereby others to access them that brings benefit. Because it's through encountering the teachings that one understands why we are suffering and what we can do about it, which are the minds not to influence us anymore, those that we need to abandon, and likewise which minds will benefit us and lead to lasting happiness, and how to cultivate them. In other words, what should be adopted and abandoned. This we come to know through encountering the Buddha's teachings, through those who keep it alive in this world, through taking hold of it themselves. So from this then, hopefully we can see how the scriptural teachings act as a cause for the realized teachings. Because it's through cultivating the scriptural teachings, understanding the teachings through hearing and reflecting, and understanding thereafter how to meditate on them, that one can meditate effectively on them. And it's this process of cultivating the scriptural teachings that leads to the attainment of the paths. Or to express it differently, it's through this process of cultivating the scriptural teachings that one leads to attaining the realized teachings. Because these realized teachings are the results of the scriptural teachings. The realized teachings are the realizations of the varying paths.
다네 베지디 상기 구가라 샤야는 최den가라 샤는 디그르베는 샤 초구리 디그리에서라 최대 상기 구강라 구디에제 구강라 베지도 샤나 디그르베는 디그리에스 숭가라 구디된 샤나 디그르베는 디그마레스 지상 가르스네 숭디 대지 대징한 저기 제반한의 초도 규발체 숭데 짜치면자 지상 구당 최den가라 숭디 샤나 샤 초구를 가지고 베지딘데 디그디 갑라 지자다 베지의 월제 디가를 구샤야던 최den샤네 저기는데 디고 말해지리다.
From the presentation I've just given in the previous segment, hopefully it's clear that the enlightening activities of speech, the teachings of the Buddha, are primary, are supreme. And another way that this can be understood is the basis for the body of the Buddha in our world are statues. The basis representing the mind of the Buddha in our world are stupas, and the basis for the representing the teachings of the Buddha in the world, the physical basis, will be the texts. Here we need to be clear. Of these three, the supreme is the teachings of the Buddha, which are represented by the texts. So on your shrine at home, if you have all three arranged, the representation of the Buddha's body, so a statue, a speech, a text, and thirdly, the mind, a stupa, then these three can be arranged at the same level. But if one needs to arrange one above the other, what is not suitable is to place the text as underneath the stupa or the statue, because the speech of the Buddha is to be related to as being supreme, because this is what can transform beings' minds. Therefore, if one is going to place one above the other, then the texts need to be placed highest, and the statue and the stupa beneath. And this is how you'll see this shrine set up, and all shrines will either be the three alongside each other, or the texts in the supreme position, held aloft, such as we have here. Now the text presents an illustration. To give an analogy, when you have a horse race, you first show the horse the course, and after showing it, the race follows the same course. As the translation shows, before one has a horse race, one shows the horse the course, perhaps has a practice trot along the course, so that the horse has gained familiarity with the place where, or the ground where the race will be run. And it continues, the text continues, it would be ridiculous to show it a course and then have the race elsewhere. And the meaning is clear. If one showed a particular race course to a horse and then raced somewhere else, this is ridiculous. That would be a pretty poor trainer, because all that would happen is the horse would be confused and it would not turn out well at all. The paragraph concludes, when it comes to accomplishments, how could it be appropriate to accomplish something after having determined something else through listening and reflecting?
퇴 삼기 시리 다 퇴바제 되네 된들에 삼당제 된들이야 삼당 다 동반이 거퇴 된다지 삼당 동반이 되네 시에도 와스비 된다 삼당제 나 제마 주비갑라 동반이 고미에 주당가 동반이 공부에서는 꾸조입니다 바로 삼 제치도 삼당 되면은 디 다다 차고 말해제 제가 년라 팝네 주바나 현시도 갈라롱스 제가 동반이 퇴비게 퇴바다 삼바 흉직 된다지를 퇴바다 삼바 직제 대지 퇴삼제바 디 먹음바지 현다지 곰되바네 또 유래게 연구 말해서 진짜 줍도 갈라지 줍투 마주야스 제고 줍투 말해서 송거 제가 대시 다 유서 된바데다 퇴삼제바인데 직법별로자 다다도 유에디 네 된사들 마주버자 사실 현다지를 규주바디 디단다 퇴섬 제바데 마고마체 현다지 고메 삼다베나 되네 도고줄리기 맞다 야고 규모도 바나시 도고줄리기 말해서 됐습니다.
So when one has heard teachings on a topic many times and reflected on its meaning. And here we can think of any topic, whether impermanence or any other, but let's just say emptiness. You've heard many teachings on emptiness, reflected well on it, and now you come to accomplishing it, in other words, to meditate on it. But now you don't meditate on emptiness, which is the topic that you have been studying and reflecting on, thinking about the meaning extensively. But now you come to meditate on something else. It's not going to go well. You're not going to realize what you set out to realize, whether it was the topic you're hearing and reflecting on, or the different topic you then went to meditate on. You're not going to realize anything, because like a trainer who showed a horse one circuit and then raced them somewhere else, the only confusion is going to abound.
가상 슈바다 지바레 가상도 가르치송 세네 지게 최마도 랍네 최지루 현도 제셔바다스 가상데도와 최마도 랍네 최지루 현도 제셔 거바 주나 노인스 어디다 지바레데 코니 가서 어디 퇴삼디 현다지 방고진체 다때 주변염내 제도 당아 주변염내 제고도 직접 수절의 장고나 지 랍칸지 수인나서 제외나 디노아레스 지단 주변염내 제대 강 퇴삼지바 랍되바디 강하고 될야 제주도 고미하게 디가 주바지고 그래 사실 지단 디리다 지바레 강 퇴삼제비기 퇴바제 퇴비기 된들 봐 삼제 된라 팝샤바 디 곰고르마도 디 마곰바제 현다지 된라 퇴삼제 된라 선배 된라 베바디 마곰바제 고미하게 갑래 현다지 곰바이네 디니 뭐 난게 롭종의 냠는디 뭐 관계 보도 패투고 말했어 제부디 야고지 용 말했어 우리 송으로
Can understand the meaning behind the illustration well by looking at the bottom of page 15 to the quotation that we looked at last night from Dromtunpa. If after studying the Dharma extensively, you feel you need to search elsewhere for a way to apply the Dharma, you are mistaken. So what Dromtunpa is saying there is perfectly in accordance with the illustration that Lama Tsongkhapa has now given, which is if you're receiving teachings on the topic and reflecting on it, coming to understand it well and gain certainty, but now you think, I need to go elsewhere to find out what to do. This is a mistake. You have been gathering knowledge, hearing, and thinking about the meaning, reflecting extensively. Now you should be ready to meditate on that. Because as we saw, scriptural teachings have those two components. Coming to understand the topic well, and thereafter, coming to understand well how to meditate on it. Thereafter, that is what you should be meditating on. So hopefully, bringing these two together, you can see the great importance of this particular sequence. Hearing and reflecting, and then meditating on it. And if one does so well, one's mind will gain transformation. If not, one will struggle to achieve much more than ongoing confusion and perhaps disappointment.
데데르 양 곰림 타말레스 지나다 로베 까말레 시세비게 곰림 데라야 곰림 당보단 바와 타마 수명로 제 타마딜레 가서 수명로스네 타말레스 양 퇴바다 삼발레 주위 시럽교 똑바 강인바 디니 곰발레 주위 시럽교 곰브라자와 이 자이 현도 마인데 따규기 때네 규버시노스네.
Now coming to an expression, a quotation from the third stages of meditation. So I'll read it out, but it's two sentences. At the end of the first sentence, I'll just add a few words that were missed. Whatever has been realized by the two types of wisdom arisen from listening and reflecting is precisely what should be cultivated by means of the wisdom arisen from meditation and not something else. Just like a horse runs the course it has been shown.
대지 된다 대진야만 쉬바드나 지바레 가르송하스네 양 퇴바다 삼발의 주위 셰럽교 또바 강인바 하스데 지사 당보 중디 퇴비 된데 삼제 셰럽교 또바세 된 디레샤스네 된디 퇴비게 삼비 셰럽교 또 데니 또바 데니 또바 데니 공고래서 대니라 제치도 공바를 주위 셰럽기 공발자와 있어. 대니라 퇴비게 된들이야 삼바지 셰럽기 파 된디 또요도 된다하라 미제 아니 공고래스마도 공고래스 공발자와 이 현도 많이 시도 퇴비게 된 삼배 된디 하고와 디마고 맞지 현도 겁나 지금 말해서 현도 많이 있어. 임변하듯이 달이야 조사 육사의 파사지 돼 될 마주바지 규린도 규보갑라 나 현다지를 규바나신지네 근데 그 딱고 야고 규도 말해서 제가 좀 야고 튼투 말해 디다지 말해 송으로마다
Lama Tsongkhapa is presenting this additional quotation from Kamala Shila's Stages of Meditation so as to again make clear this point so that we can have confidence and certainty in it. So the meaning is the same as just been expressed above, that one needs to hear many teachings on a topic and whilst doing so reflect on the meaning, coming through one's intelligence or wisdom to know the meaning precisely. And when one is ready, has come to know the meaning precisely, both of the topic and how to meditate on it, then one should embark on meditating on what you have come to gain certainty of, what you have come to understand precisely. One should not then either meditate on something different that you haven't been hearing and reflecting on, or seek out meditation instructions from elsewhere. That is a mistake. And that then is also the meaning of the words that we missed out in the translation. Whatever has been realized by the two types of wisdom arisen from listening and reflecting is precisely what should be cultivated by means of the wisdom arisen from meditation and not something else.
아니네. 시송소세되네. 대다르스 담바디스 디 신인된주네 신예당 하동게 발 송럽 공제란 집에 남게네 탐제 상월의 뒤네 덴바레서 띵거레서 뒤네서
Continuing on page 16, just below the second quotation. Thus, through summarizing all the essential points of the path set forth in the scriptures and their commentaries, starting from how to rely on a spiritual teacher, up to shamatha and special insight.
George Sonpege and Jason Casa Lamrim Damga D and the Garet Tingore, Jujal Masona Caritinus, Guishin Tinsunema, and Chikshin Tinsutine, the Baralea Chichiwamita Pasada, and Lake Unit Jamdro, Sad Lake Unit, Dene, and Korean Yemik some dia, Dene, and Dungaling Asian some dia, and then Marge, and Jigge Jamni Jaju Sem, and Semkia, Dene Passion drew, Dene something Shine Komia, and take something, Dene, and the Shine to the Sheraki Barjan Passion drew, Dibardo, and Dusine, Shine. Shin Dinsu, Shine, Houghton, Barsidan, Jugi, Passion Drew Nani, something Passion Tamadra, Di Bardo, Gondela, Sunrup Gondela Jeba, Sunrup said, Sanyi, Sumbi, dirty, Sanyi, Sunrup, Sanyi, Sumbi, Sunche. That Gondel said, that Sanyi, Sumbi, Sungi, do Gondel, Combolu, the Papa Tomala Soba, the Negi, Gahar, Keru, Namkima. Gongzhe Songxie Bege Dene, Gongzhe Dan Jie Bege, Lam Ye Nian, Duan Dan Ningbo Chasang Du Ne, Cangwa, Cha Cangwa, Ma Cangwa Meba, Chasang Cangwa de Dian Due Re Che Du Ne.
Yeah, this first part of the sentence means that one receives many teachings on the topics such as those presented in the Lamp of the Path by Lama Atisha, topics that ranging from how to rely on one's spiritual teacher, the preciousness of this human rebirth, but its impermanent nature, and thereafter the varying realms that one will take rebirth in, and why so, due to cause and effect, and thereafter the varying reflections on the sufferings of samsara as well, and thereafter having come to understand well-definite emergence, the teachings on love, compassion, bodhicitta, etc. So this entire range, including how to cultivate the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, having come to understand that well through studying the great texts such as the teachings from the Buddha, as well as their commentaries by great masters such as Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti, having understood all of this in depth and in an unmistaken way, and thereby coming to know clearly the essential points of all these topics.
Dine zada donda nyingbo le lamdren dige kare tingko re sene jejal ma sona ma da de shine ne la tong ba se de tang zo ki bu chung lam ji rin ba ane dinge la ki bu chung da tumo ka sa tumo lam ji rin ba ki bu ting da tumo lam ji rin ba ki bu chin bi lam ji rin ba cha sa zu du ne ting ko re di ma je ane diga ya ne ki bu chin bo de la ane paru de chin bi ge ane chi ki bu chung lam ji rin ba da sang do ji be ki bu lam ki bu chin be lam ji rin ba cha sa du ji ne chi yu yu ji yin ba la don da ning bo cha sa du ji chang de ba cha sa ting ko re je re ting ko re 딩고래 죄자 가려어랬는데 남동기 죄자 남동나라 가르가르 희고랬는데 기부충의 투멸라 투모 남이르바 냠nen지들이 뭐 차상 송고래스 기부딩다 투모 남이르바 차상 송고래스 기부 침별 남이르바 투모 남이르바 냠nen지 차상 송고래스 제자 기부 침별 남이르바나 바로도 침바다 상하도지 대비 남이르바 차상 송고 직유유지 남동의 직유유지 마도요 말제 donda 차상 닝보 차상 류제네 donda 차상 창화데 송요래서 다 죄자디지 송고요 죄자디지 고래 송고래 남도디 송고래 제로다.
And all these essential points are contained in Atisha's Lamp on the Path to Enlightenment. So all these essential points from these great texts from the sutras and their commentaries are contained in the specific sequence of trainings that are in accordance with the sequence in which we need to train, starting with the training shared with the practitioner of initial capacity, developing our foundation by which we can have a clear, focused mind on cultivating the Dharma within us, having that as the focus of our life, building on that with the training shared with the practitioner of intermediate capacity, where with now this powerful focused mind, we look at samsara in its entirety and liberation from there. And thereafter, with such an incredible foundation, one is ready to engage in the trainings which are unique to practitioners of supreme capacity. And this text, Atisha's Lamp, even also contains a brief presentation on the stages of secret mantra.
On that Geshe Thubten Lamrim Dige Geshe Thubten Chasangwa ji nyamling rimba chasangwa den yo re so da tik nyu ji ba je la don da chasangwa du ne du she ba den ba den yo re den ba re je na de ne den na den de da tham je la jogum go ba na la jogum je jegum gom ba jegum go ba nam la so so to be she de bi je de nyamling rimba ji ne ti be na so ji za 람령기 갈sun 것은 데네기 냠는 지기 제다데 차상 대요레스 데네 댐비게다 냠는 지비 림바 카브렐레 제옴 제고야다 카브렐레 조금 제고용 거레스 제사당은 주기 미다바세야다 동반이세야다 다음에 봐세 디파 또발라 제바 망우제 삼나다 디진의 김선 삼나 제바진 또 고바자 제공고바 제옴 제고 그래 다 제공 제선 된다 또 차나 또 봐지니 지고 말에 셈 템부 세고래 디 템부 세벌레 띵이 지지도 미네 조금 제고래 제사 되는 연자다 고 냠는 지게 림바들레 차사데 제공 조금 제고 바나나 조금 제다지 차사데 제공 고바는 제공 소스도 비셔르게 제네 겁나 자 제공 제다다 조금 제다 냠는 림바 차사 추지네 뉘네 되어레세 제사데 미다 미다바다 다음에 봐 차사를 미도바 마도 당보 제바체다 당보 미도 마도인라 산로 망보 당고로 제바체 김제 삼다 미다바 또 호라디 제고마 디나신 다음에 봐 마도 바니래 당보 다음에 봐 세컨드 바 제바체 삼다 디나지 동바니스다 다음에 제바체 삼다 두신 제바체 두신 또 호라 제 제공거 다디 또 세웨체라 또 와징이 디고 말다 셈 파셈 뉴버치 뭐 띵이진 띵부 고고인자 내려다 동바니다 다음에 받을 제주민의 조금 주고야 신의 주변에 조금 제거야 되는 송제 제사 그 제금 갑자기 가셔야 제금 제거 당보 또야를 제금 제거 받네 제금 제받게 사상 송요래서 다들 또 사회에 제주도 입에 셈 뉴버처도 제주도 입에 띵이진 주고자 이 조금 제거 되네 신라송도 주변에 조금 걸어와 되네서 조금 제거 조금 제사다 단달라 람른디기 기부 치료 충수미 람이림바 차상한테 다 람이림바 냠는 제다대야 제공 고반나라 조금 제다 조금 전에 조금 제거다 진짜 제공다 조금 냠는림바 차상도 쓰는 송요래세
The Lamrim text, whether Atisha's Lamp on the Path or the other Lamrim texts, are very condensed, but they contain the complete trainings without error or omission. So if just in a few words, vast meaning is presented. Then continuing with the sentence, they all condensed into stages of practical application in terms of employing placement meditation, where placement meditation is required, and analyzing with the wisdom of fine investigation, where analytical meditation is required. Here, through hearing and reflecting well on all the topics of the Lamrim, one comes to understand these topics in fine detail. And as we saw at the beginning of the paragraph above, where we need to that the Dharma should be practiced, we understand how the Dharma should be practiced. This comes to hearing and reflecting on the varying topics of the Lamrim. And whilst one does so, one will be reflecting analytically and reflecting through placement, alternating between the two. When one is sufficiently familiar on a topic, one will be able to engage in meditation on that topic. So the purpose of when one is hearing and reflecting to engage in the two types of reflection, reflecting with analysis, investigating, then when some understanding arises, one places one's mind so on that which is arising to one's mind, so as to strengthen one's familiarity and become more stable in what one is gaining familiarity of. And then later, when one has sufficient understanding of a topic, then one is ready to engage in meditation, because now, also looking at that sentence above, have established a manner of accomplishment, then one is ready to engage in actual meditation. So one will cultivate calm abiding and meditative insight on whatever topic that may be, from anywhere from the topics of impermanence right up to cultivating the realization of emptiness. Whatever the topic is, one will have heard many teachings on it and reflected on it. Now one has come to understand the topic well and how to meditate on it well, and one will now try to cultivate the union of calm abiding and meditative insight on that topic. So this is a process where one needs to not only know the topic well, but how to meditate on it well, which means one will understand when to engage in analytical meditation and when in placement, and then back to analytical, back to placement. All this knowledge and experience will have been gained, and now one is ready to engage in actual meditation that will lead to realization, or the attainment of the realizational teaching.
Tsongkhapa tamje damga do sherne dedala damba chodu tsimba ngeba jedes. Dine yenzada dine gi janshu lamdren delia tu sinanga zu lobjong che tu twesam che nyamlen che yodu dine dele dine nikar soru Tsongkhapa tamje damga do go tu guri shar Sanji Sungbi Sunra Kanichi, Sanji Gobon Tubi, Tablan Temba Shada Resha, Jisanganzuli, Damga Anzuli, Yamlin Joga Resha, Sembege, Damado, Sha, Semlea Duxin, Resha, Sembing Yabashi to Dene, Dela, and Chodu Zimba, Damba Chodu Zimba, Dambigi Chodu Zimba, Nebani, that is just Sanji Gobon to be should Temba Yanja Resha, Dine Zadan, Yamlin Joga, Yamlin Joga, Sembigi Chodu Zimba. 어딘 에바 기기리 에스르 되네 디 손라타제 담가도 샤와세 디소르 지다 장주 람린 데라 퇴섬 곰숨제 두 솔롭전 제여도 상기의 수비 수럽 간이시네 차사 탈도나 상기 고방 토비추 간사지의 상계바라 상기 고방주 탑란 템바 샤다 임바디 고투브리스 지다디 아다 상기 순간에나 담바 초도 유바레샤 선베기 소솔량 에바시기리스 에바니리스 지다디 데니지레여도 다 순라탐제 담가도 샤와세 샤와세실에 고레지레 샤네 데달라 담바 초도 셈바 에바 끼데스 디바도
The paragraph continues. These instructions guide you so that all the scriptures present themselves to you as personal instructions. The conviction develops that they should be understood as supreme advice. Here, through what you have been hearing throughout this particular greatness, the greatness of understanding that all the Buddhist teachings are spiritual instructions or relating to them as such, is that one comes to see with vivid clarity for oneself, not merely having heard, but internalized it, that every teaching the Buddha gave he gave so as to benefit beings, and they all play their part in leading to the attainment of enlightenment. So therefore, the way that I should be relating to the teachings is see them all as personal instructions for myself. That the way I need to engage in the teachings is seeing them as personal instructions, not as a mere intellectual advice, not as advice that is suitable for others, but as my own personal instructions. This then is the way that we should relate to the teachings, seeing them as being supreme advice, that there's nothing to be sought elsewhere, nothing greater or higher or more magical, but these teachings that one is receiving here, these are my personal spiritual instructions.
아니 나가 저 손라탐제 담가도 샤세디 고야디 디니시 하고서는 손라탐제 담가도 샤와레스 거로와다 샤세디 제사 산지 유승비 순간에 지네 차상 산지 타르 산지고 뭐 내가다 타르토빅 치도 숨바이네야 타르도 제부 산지고 뭐 틀숨바디 짱짱 인바디 하고요도 다디 산지 손라탐제 소술이야 산지고 뭐 토비 탑란 템바 샤다 인바 디치도 숨바 인바 디 하고요도 손라타제다 담가 샤세 다디 안주 냠는 제고야 리도와 지사디 딩안줄 거야 엄마 타바치미 최년에 제발에 돼서 아니지 년도 란여스미 최되지 라고 말 장고 말에 선배 삼노디 아니지 매바 차기를 했어 지사디 판도여 바다 산지고 본 토비 치르도 타도 산지고 본 토비 탑람 땜바 샤다 인자 인바다 하고요도 근데 델이야 지가로 통전 다야다 고야민도 세야다 내니게 안내 제 삼노디 용말 와서 지사다 하고 두 그래서 되네 담아 샤와서
What we're seeing here sits very well with the previous greatness of the Dharma, which was to understand that all teachings of the Buddha are not to be seen as mutually exclusive. That some that some are not for me; they're for others. I'm someone who aspires to the paths of the Mahayana, so therefore the teachings for heroes and solitary realizers, no, they're not for me. This is a mistake. To abandon the Dharma like that, to look down on certain segments of the Buddhist teachings, is an error. And so that's what we looked at in the previous greatness. So this greatness is building on that, where one recognizes that all the teachings within the Buddha Dharma, these are personal advice for me, because everything the Buddha taught, he taught to benefit beings and to lead them all to enlightenment. So therefore, the way I should relate to all the Buddha Dharma is that to receive it as personal advice for me.
Denam damga ngwe minbi che jap zamdu che jap zamdu zembi loto nam laba mebar doba gyurus.
And the verse concludes, the paragraph concludes, and the misconception that they should be understood as mere background knowledge for the Dharma rather than as actual instructions is completely reversed.
Denam damga ngwe minba che jap zamdu zimba side zimbigi ane loto side that 날 디송으로 배는 저기 태바 침비게 응아 태바 침비 취 냠는 지게리 지자 년도다 랑제 수비 취디게 먼저 냠는 지고고 말에 해야지 겹세네 다도 신앙을 빨아 잘라마나 디파 잡론 바 유시 먹었어야 돼 지파 유바데 겹세디로 하나 파직 가서래 저기 지게 미지미니 무슨 버리지나 그 마간 수 잡로디야죠. 어디 거면 뒤로지. 거기 먹었어야 돼. 저제면 잡로디야죠. 어디나시 제가 최잡시도 아주 tak바집에 최제래. 제가 년도다 랑이 준비 취되게 장고 말 거야요. 말에서는 파 잡론 파 샤야 잠데 되네게 먹어야게 판도 매바르지. 진바이나 디 로도레스. 로도레. 디나신 아주게 땅아 사 태베 사 Dorje Tebi Nyamla Chigade, Chesa Duye Namshadiki, Chikoto Parduchib Tabati, Pachango, Maracos, Namdore, Chesa Denisa Namdo Yakibar, Chesa Namdo Bango, Chesa Denisa, Tesul Jango, Omar, Tisupa, Pando Yomar, Inga, Yamla Disukoya, Yomar, Lucine, Samdam, and dear Pa Jablopa, Yushe, dear Lodo Chakore, Chesa that Dene is a Dinashi, Tanganjugis. 또 바로도 집에 최 냠는 지게를 상아 세대 약원이 고야마디 냠는 지겨 마세 봐 자변에 대한 최 겹도 좀 봐. 유와 겹 최게 좀 로도 근데 최 겹도 좀 로도 하세요. 디소리스 지나다 람론들도 센 롭종 제도 제어도 제가 상예기 술 숨베 최 간에시네야 상아 dorje 최나다 안지 바로도 집에 태바 최나자 년도다 란예스메 최나자 샘전 탐지기도 상지 고방 토발라 지수 차상 냠는 지역 고바지당 지수 차상기 안 상지 고방 집에 탑람 뭐든 유비고네 상지 고방 토비 치도 안 탑람 띵기요 봐 판도요 봐지 하고 투도 하고요도 언데네기다 고야요 말에 샘비기 로도디파 안 매가 차기 돼서 함에도 도바기로 저기는 매가 차로 그래서 지상 로도도 용 말해서 그러다
Just before coming to Geshe's commentary, just to say, Tibetan, especially written Tibetan, but also spoken, is often quite ambiguous. And so therefore, sometimes in texts, one will have something translated in one way, but can be interpreted in others. So this will be an illustration of that. It doesn't mean the translators made a mistake, but the same thing can be read differently. So, from the explanation, you'll see what I'm referring to. It's referring to the word background knowledge for the Dharma. That this can be taken differently because the Tibetan merely is Dharma, back, and mir. So that's all the Tibetan says. So it can be read in differing ways. Okay, now to come to what Geshe said, but just so that in the future, when you come across text and you hear a different understanding, it doesn't necessarily mean the translation is mistaken. It may do so, but maybe not. So Geshe's commentary to this final part of the sentence, is that whatever the Buddha taught, we should understand that it was taught with the purest of motivations, which is to benefit beings, and from the perspective of the greatest of wisdom, which understands how to benefit beings and what the benefit beings are yearning for, even if they don't know that, which is the attainment of enlightenment. So therefore, everything that was taught to benefit beings and benefit them in a way to guide them explicitly or implicitly to enlightenment. Every teaching plays its part in leading beings who cultivate that teaching within them to eventually attain enlightenment. Whether that teaching is a teaching for included in the hero vehicle, or the solitary realizer vehicle, or the Mahayana vehicle, the Bodhisattva vehicle, as well as whether it's contained within the sutra teachings of the Buddha or the Tantra teachings of the Buddha. With that understanding, we will not turn our back on any segment of the Dharma, which is something that if you imagine you with a group of people and there's someone you really don't like, you'll turn your back towards them rather to focus your attention on your friend. And rather this person you don't like, you'll ignore them by turning your back on them. This is not how we should approach people, and it's certainly not how we should approach any topic or division of the Dharma. Rather, we should be aware of having a bias, and if we recognize that this bias would be a mistaken conception, there we go, a misconception of the Buddha's intent, a misconception of the purpose of the teachings. And all the Buddha's teachings, we do need to come to know and actualize, internalize, so that we can benefit beings who themselves are most suited to that teaching. And therefore, to turn one's back on any aspect of the Dharma is a mistake.
년도다 라지르 승비 추다 상아 도지테바들 간줄 추 상주 고방 토비 추 태바치메 쉬 냠는 체인들 판도 요르데 지수기다 데 판도 요바들 독초 고야야마 판도 요 말에서네 삼바다면에 겹점도 진바서 독 단달라 독초 진바 판도 요바들 판도 매바 진바 삼다에자 독초 진바시 그러지나 진짜 겹점도 진바서는 디 독초 진바서 고고르다 된다래.
If we take the two words, behind and before, these are, of course, are going to be opposite. And either is facing forward or backwards. So it's before and behind are opposite. So similarly, we should be aware of a misunderstanding of turning our back on any aspects of the Dharma. For example, the thought that I'm striving to attain the paths of a bodhisattva. The teachings of the hero and solitary realizer, these aren't for me. Because actually, those who are bodhisattvas know that some beings are certainly more inclined to the teachings of the hero lineage or solitary realizer lineage, and to benefit them, to ensure they don't fall into the low realms, that they cultivate paths and they continue progressing towards liberation. The bodhisattva needs to guide them in the paths of the hero and solitary realizer. So therefore, someone who is aspiring to the bodhisattva paths, just like someone who has attained them, we should not turn our back on any segment of the Buddha's teachings.
And the Nanyingbo de Lang answer during Chishuadi, Chitanda Sanyi Yusumbi, Tambi Che Delia, Chitanda Lungi Tempas, Lungi Cheta, and Topi Tempas, the Tempas, the Ni Yongre, Chitanda Lungi Tempas, the Karasan Sanyi Yusumbi Sung Digi, Topi Tempas said, Sanyi Yusumbi Sung Delia, Tubache, the Sambache, Tusamje, then Tusam Duende, and Sosugi, Ya, and Gomje. Sosugula and Topacula Kiguban, Kiesona, the Negi Topatelia, and the Topi Tempa like Resaje, and so Topi Tempa the Lungi Tempa says, on Duscene, New Resaje. That the Nanying Bola, and Anzugi Karakuch Koresena, the Nanying Bola Anzugi Yamnejo Gom Jade, so the and Tersan Jungchilia, Terbache, Tubu, Duende, Samje, somebody how would you? Di duen tela mi chi ne gom go re gom ja go re chi sa di gom go ma do di ne ge kye ba da san bi duen shan da che 안 고미야데 샤나 샨다치를 삼당 공바이나 니 좀제하고 용마레스 너네님 보딩 아주 디린 쉬야되다 너네님 보디레 가지다 퇴바다 삼바데 퇴삼니데 예첨부 임바제 되네 안 삼베 된텔라 곰제 주부님은 제바이나 돈다 주부리에스 지상 퇴바다 삼바데 마제바이나 고미야메 되네 퇴바다 삼비 된데 제바이나 삼바딜레 삼바 퇴베 삼바딜레 파샤 곰제도 샴바지 세세베나 딘 제부야고 좀 투 마레스 데도나 투 마레스 제자다 뇨모베나 빵 투 마레 안에 지게 맞아 다음에 벌 또에 동반이 또에네 동반이 퇴바지 삼비 된다 삼 곰메데 바 인지게 샨다지 삼당 곰바이네 데 동반이 된다 다다지 야고 좀 투 마레스 제자 디네자 뇨모바 님보디 부이다고 차도 되게 차모도는 녀모바 빵도 말해 녀모바 마토는 타바드 탐지기be 공토도 말해 지산도 돈다들라 당보 튀어바지 삼바지 삼비 된들야 아니 그치게 제 곰제 냠는 제 오래 세지 돈다 님보 돌드나 쉬에디 디리도 하다
To summarize what we've looked at here is that the Buddha's holy Dharma itself is twofold, that of scriptural teachings and the realized teachings. So what was presented here is really of quite some importance, because we've hopefully come to understand that the scriptural Dharma is is how the Dharma should be practiced. So one receives teachings, and one through hearing many teachings on topics and reflecting on them, one will come to understand that topic very well, and thereafter, contained within the scriptural teachings, one comes to understand the manner in which these need to be meditated on or accomplished, the various stages, the potential pitfalls, and how to deal with the obstacles when one does engage in actual meditation on the topic. This then, in brief, is what we've looked at here today. And what I encourage you to take from this class is to take what we're looking at in this entire section, including, of course, today's class, as personal meditation advice for you. And the meditation advice to take away from here is that the way to relate to every teaching you receive, whether you're reading a book or receiving oral teachings, is to take them as spiritual instructions, to guard yourself from the mistake of merely gathering knowledge, but take these as the teachings as spiritual instructions to apply to your own mind. And how to do so? Through hearing and reflecting. Hearing is the gathering of knowledge, or studying, hearing or studying. And the reflecting is the thinking for ourselves. Is it like this? Is it not like that? Why is it like that? Thinking in detail to come to gain certainty of a topic. Certainty in the sense of where conviction has arisen that it is like that. And that conviction is expressed by how we will see the world, interact with the world in a different way. This is the process towards progressing towards meditating on the particular topic. And furthermore, we need to understand that if one relates to the teachings in this way, seeing them as spiritual instructions for oneself and hearing and reflecting together, there'll be no need. It would be a mistake, it would be foolish to look elsewhere, to think that now I need to seek other teachings elsewhere on how to integrate all that I've learned. Because if one does not follow in the way that Tsongkhapa is presenting here, it will not turn out well. Just like the illustration of the racehorse. It will not turn out well. And the way it will not turn out well is that one's mind will not change much. One will not weaken the afflictions, let alone progress towards abandoning them. So therefore, this is important meditation advice, that every teaching that one receives, take it as spiritual instructions. Reflect, continue to gather knowledge repeatedly and reflect repeatedly on what one is hearing, thinking for yourself. This is the way to spiritually progress. Without doing so, without following this advice here, spiritual progression will be extremely limited. So we can conclude the teaching there, but if you have some questions, then please feel free to ask. Okay. Cameron,
just in relation to statues, we're talking about putting the text above the statue. It's sometimes said to put statues high in a room. That would then mean that the statue is in some of the texts. Is it okay to put a statue very high in a room if it means that it would end up being higher than text in a room?
So I'll phrase it like this. So depending on the layout or the structure of one's furniture, sometimes a statue may well end up higher than texts.
Yeah.
It's something like that, yeah? Yeah.
depth all je digala kuduru shana de digo mare sungorwa andi majen depth jang kavelia dusine jin tepale kudiga choksa di sha sha on disi sha chu mare sina depth de je kuru de shin de bi sa je khoron de ne ji inza de dragiru wada.
So as I understand what you're saying, there's no fault there, because the error would be if one's wanting to position the statue nicely, so you put it under the text. And then the statue is raised. So that there clearly is an error. But when the structure of your furniture dictates something a little different, then then that is fine. And there's also not the mistaken mental conception that the statue is primary, the Buddha image is primary, and the text or something secondary. That really is the error.
Mm-hmm. Like this statue here is quite high.
Yeah.
And there's one right at the top.
Yeah.
And you are the shadow, be suju to it.
The chungwa de gang la de.
Yes, but that is suju to
it. The Geshe Thubten ki gang la di chung chik.
The mare suju de ku changes kush to adi wala sung chung shadow. When you say that you go mare, that is the shadow. You cannot go mare, suju yorta. This is going Peshidin said.
The Geshe Thubten so kude ki gang la ku chung chik. Chikjana Dorje Changyin sare. Kong di kola kesu segiore dantaram. Nome kongi jua namde, ya danta di jua chik deni di netang nipa. Geshe Thubten ki gang la Dorje Chang. Di jua gidu?
Di jigero ku gang di ru.
De gang la di ring shangse ringse
di dam di sigama di
chotan chikpa.
Ko di den 초신 알아시도 들으셨지 그 디캡로도 퇴대 여러 가지.
So what we took a little while to make sure we're talking about the same statue. So what is above the main image of Buddha Shakyamuni is, I think it's Vajradhara. So this is fine. It's at the same level as the text behind it. Or if one was to use a level, I think the builders call it, then maybe the texts are a little bit higher. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yes. Okay.
Then thank you very much.